Let's do the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I have nothing to report for actions taken in closed session. May I have someone make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Board President announcements. The district is currently enrolling new students to the district for the 2015-16 school year at the Enrollment Center located here at 375 Via Almar, PV Estates. The Enrollment Center, along with all district and school offices, will be closed on Friday, August 14th in observance of that famous California holiday, California Admissions Day. For currently enrolled students, back-to-school information and required forms are available on the district and all school websites. The first day of school is Monday, August 31st, and the schools have a minimum day schedule. Schools will be welcoming parents to the back-to-school night events on September 10th for elementary schools, September 17th for intermediate schools, September 16th for Rancho Del Mar, and September 24th for Palos Verdes and Peninsula High Schools, so plan accordingly. All right. Minute approvals for the July meeting.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right. Then we will move on to the report of the superintendent.
Thank you. We're excited to get back into the routine of doing the work of running a school district and getting our kids back and getting our staff back. Our principals began returning to work here over the last week or so, and it's been great to see them and talk to them about getting our schools ready for opening. Our management kickoff is next week, and at that point it's full steam ahead. Happy to report our math books have arrived. They're being processed, and they'll be in the hands of our students when school begins. That's quite an accomplishment, thinking about where we were just a year ago, and our board's investment over $1 million in materials, including professional development for our teachers. It's pretty unheard of for at this point going forward, before the first day of school, all of our math teachers will have received 2 days of professional development already on the new materials, which is really good news for us and for our kids. I did want to report that I've had the opportunity to meet with our city managers and Kathy Gould from the library district, and I do that each month, and we get together and talk about a variety of issues. It's funny how many of our issues parallel in some way or another. We all learn from each other, and today you're going to hear from Mr. Bahadur Singh about an issue that we're all dealing with some changes of conditions involving Cox Broadcasting, and we've been in communication. I think at the end of the day, we might end up with some potential answers that are going to be better service than what we've ever had in the past. So we're pretty happy about that. I want to thank our city managers for their advice in this area too. I had a nice conversation with Connie Sullivan from one of the Democrat groups that was requesting at a couple board meetings space for our farmers market. And I think sometimes we just have to talk, whether it's on a phone or face-to-face. But I did use the opportunity to clarify some issues. And I did want to report out on a couple things. First, we agreed that nobody from PVPUSD said that there were any rules prohibiting the types of activities that they were proposing. And that was really kind of a third-hand information that had got to her. And we talked about that and clarified that there were absolutely no rules that would prohibit what they were asking for. But they, like all groups, needed to submit a formal request for a permit, had proof of insurance, and pay a fee. In their case, and some of the other groups that were that are similar in nature, that have similar requests, that fee's $25 per week. So we talked about the large fee, the actual fee is $25. The insurance is a little different issue for them. I did inform them that the Farmers Market Organization may, again, if they wish, resubmit submit an amended permit request and list them on their insurance. Sounds simple enough, but it's potentially problematic because there's not just one group or two groups, there are several groups, and the farmers market would have to make a decision how many groups do they want to be involved with, insure, cover, and the next thing you know, is it a farmers market any longer? So that's not our decision right now. There's been no permit request submitted, and the farmers market has not resubmitted any amended request.
Can I ask something or interrupt
Sure.
for a second?
Sure.
Isn't it the same as if you're Albertsons at a shopping center, going to Albertsons and saying, can I put something in front of the store? I mean, it's essentially the farmer's market, if they go down that road, we've essentially asked to change the nature of the farmer's market to some degree. And so, I mean, it's entirely up to them what they want to do, and it's entirely up to the groups to ask for a permit, but we've given them an option both ways.
Given them several options. Option number one is to do the permit independently for same space, and there we can accommodate that if those other conditions are met. Number two, amended submission from the farmers market to include them in their application. Number three, continue to operate from the sidewalk like any other group without a permit. So they have those three options, and while the groups may or may not be real excited about those options, at least now it's concrete and it's been clarified for them what those options are. But through this process, the one last thing I want to add is that in the future, I'm either personally or going to have staff report back during open session of board meetings when things like this come forward, because it's easy to say, okay, someone speaks at the podium, they don't get a response from the board because the board isn't allowed to on a non-agendized item, and the public might think, well, I wonder whatever happened with that. And it's common that staff will follow up even the next day, and that things are clarified, that connections are made, that the resolutions are found. And I think that we have probably not done a great job of coming back and hitting on some of those. So not that we're going to give a report on every public speaker, but some are probably important enough to bring back. Okay. Thank you. Let me go to my next part. Sorry. Next, I'd like to turn over to our Deputy Superintendent, Lydia Cano, to introduce our guest.
Thank you. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce to you Russ O'Donnell. He is the Chief Operating Officer with ASKIP, and he has a special award for us tonight.
Members of the board, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here tonight. As Lydia says, I am the Chief Operating Officer with the Alliance of Schools for Cooperative Insurance Company, and I'm here to personally present the district with a Risk Management Award for being one of the best performing districts in our insurance pool. As many of you know, ASKIP is an insurance joint powers authority, and we protect over 140 districts throughout the state, and we have almost 1.2 million students. And we have been a partner with the district since 1985. As your joint powers authority, our job is to protect you when things go bad, whether that's defending lawsuits or occasionally paying claims. But more importantly, we're here to help you do things that prevent bad things in the first place. And it's all about keeping money in the classrooms so that you can provide educations for your students. Making the safety of students, staff, and public a priority is not only the right thing to do, but by preventing accidents, claims, and lawsuits, you're actually saving money for the district. I'm sure you have other things that you can use that money for. When you prevent accidents, ASKIP is able to lower insurance premiums, to provide you with more risk management services, as well as recognize those districts like we're doing tonight. Basically, that's why we call this award the Loss Control Pays Award. This award serves to highlight the importance of proactively reducing district losses through loss control efforts. And just to name a few, the kinds of services you've sought from us is we have a human resource hotline that you utilize. We have forklift training, playground supervisory training, sexual harassment training. We've done a chemical lab sweep at your high school, and we've completed traffic surveys and general safety audits. So working with your staff, Lydia is one of our board of directors. Working with her and Laura Dodell and the other senior staff, you've truly shown that you're best in class in terms of creating a safe environment, not only for your students, but for your workers and the public at large. So I'd like to present you a nice certificate. It's nicely framed. And along with that goes a check for $1,500 to the district.
We put him on the upward slant.
Okay.
Exactly.
Lydia, perhaps you could highlight some of the other items that helped us with the last
Sure.
year.
Sure. We take advantage of the services that they provide whenever we need any kind of safety inspections. Most recently, we had them out to take a look at the tennis courts at Penn High. That was just, maybe 2 weeks ago. We send all our contracts for them to review so that they can give us guidance before we send them to the attorneys that cost a lot of money. So we do that very, very regularly. We are using more of their training for our custodians. Donna's working with them and getting more training set in place this past year. We have had other safety inspections. ASCIP is helping us. I think you remember I mentioned signage. So they're actually set an appointment to come out with Chris and Louie and walk the sites and identify the signs that we need and give us the proper verbiage for the signs. Let me think what else.
Well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, so
Yeah,
that's a pretty good list.
I
Yeah,
think what's good too is that all of these services are free of charge. It's included with the premium. So it's really unlimited services, and we can't really provide them to you unless we have staff at the district who is willing to help us coordinate and provide those services.
Well, we appreciate the partnership very much, and appreciate always having money in the coffers, so thank you.
And I want to say thank you for coming down here, because for many years, we've seen the word, the initials ASCIP, but we've never been able to put a face to the organization. So it's very nice to see the person behind the organization. Thank you very much for
Behind the
coming here.
curtain. Thank you. It's nice to meet you all too.
Thank you, Russ.
Thank you.
Drive safely.
Next, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Culverhouse to discuss a draft of our professional development plan. But before I do, I want to just really thank all of Ed Services. The quality of work that's coming out of Ed Services is pretty top notch right now. This is the next piece that you're going to see tonight. Anywhere just from general presentation and professionalism of the document to the thought that goes behind what our plan really is, and being on the forefront and being in front of money coming to our district specifically carved out for professional development, while other districts are going to scramble to think, okay, how do we spend this money? We have a plan that starts with what do we want to do, and then the money came in behind. Very different than getting a pot of money and then saying, how do we go spend it? So the work out of Ed Services is outstanding, and Dr. Culverhouse, your leadership is very much appreciated.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. I'd like to reference in your manila folder, because we're giving everything to our board in this, in order. We also have copies of our preliminary plan on the table in the back. But as Dr. Austin said, thank you, this document just presents a preliminary outline of the 2015-16 District Professional Development Plan. And as always, there's always a risk in presenting a first draft of any document, but it also represents the vision of our district administration and a continued improvement as we're looking at increasing achievement. It also represents the compilation of the work that's going to guide the direction of our district. This professional development plan, as you're flipping through it, is also aligned to our board goals, which then are aligned to our LCAP, and then we have our professional development goals, they're over on page 8, that will guide and direct our work. This preliminary document just represents the first part of this overall professional development plan. The second part is going to include an action plan for each one of the goals that you see on page 8. So each one of those goals will have an action plan attached. Also, this professional development plan, it's also critical as we are going to be accepting the educator support and professional development funding that Lydia is going to speak about in her presentation. So we have an aligned strategical plan. The overall purpose is based on creating this common understanding amongst our stakeholders in regards to our focus, our philosophy, our methodology, our process, and we're actually using our process and putting it in place. So it really is vital to creating a common message, communication, a thread that's going to ensure a plan implemented with fidelity and then elevate the productivity district-wide. So as Dr. Austin said, it's the foundation of the work that we're doing and a reason why we have that professional development that's aligned to the funding coming in.
Dr. Culverhouse, I want to anticipate that our board might be saying, okay, but where are the actual activities and dates? That comes next. So
Correct.
This is the foundation work. We are ahead of schedule in getting that work done. In the absence of a calendar attached doesn't mean that work hasn't already begun and isn't scheduled. It's just this is the first part of the draft coming forward. So we're going to give this to you in a couple pieces with no action needed tonight.
So I want to highlight two things, if it's all right, unless someone else has something to say first. The state in general, when we have additional monies and they feel there's things that need to be addressed, will throw money at a problem. They don't tell you how to figure it out, they just throw money at a problem. So you see a lot of districts that are getting a lot of money for supplemental things that don't necessarily have a plan of how to spend the money in an effective way to actually achieve the goal that the money is designed to help achieve. So I want to congratulate you guys on this, first the start, but the whole process of the way we're going through this. We've known as a board for a long period of time that professional development was something we had no funds for and something we desperately needed. And we now have some money coming in, but having the money coming in doesn't mean we're going to do any reasonable professional development unless we actually design the plan and then follow through with the plan. And the fact that you're going through the exercise the right way and measured right way is a testament to the leadership at the head of the district, the immediate next person down, all the people on the staff that are on the cabinet that are participating in this. And we honestly have I think I can also say for the board, we have very high expectations as to what this is going to do. And we have every confidence that you will deliver on those expectations.
It's a team effort. Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I am so impressed by this first effort. I can't believe it. It's wonderful. I am so excited about actually having a plan, having money for staff development, first of all, and then having a plan to go forward with it. It is something we've desperately needed for so long, and I'm very excited about this, and I just want to thank you for taking this first step. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. I think you'll enjoy the second step that comes along with it, with the action plan.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
And this is great. My question is this is not just for teachers, this is for all staff?
Right, it's
Is
a
that right?
district.
Because I'm reading it and I just want to make sure for my understanding. So you're overseeing, it's not, because when you think of professional development as a parent, you just think of it as teacher things, but it's a much broader scope than that. Is that correct?
Correct. Well, right now, this plan right now is being focused on our classroom and our teachers, because it's aligned to our LCAP and our board goals. So we're concentrating on our certificated FAS and our achievement level. And the next step also is that classified, we've already in contact with the classified leadership in providing that training as well.
For paraeducators?
Correct.
Or for everybody
Correct.
else that's involved with the kids?
Correct.
But just to go along with that, the money, the actual carve-out is for certificated. But Dr. Bose and I have been working with Joan, our CSEA president, and we're going to have a top-notch professional development day dedicated. This should be the first time, I believe, in the history of the district, in our non-student day is that January? Mm-hmm. In January, that will be a professional development unlike anything they've seen here. So we're trying to balance those two things out, but the one-time money that we're talking about is carved out for certificated.
But this main page, I think this is the main page. This is the main page. with the
Right.
things, so-
Correct. And you'll see that on page 8, our staff goals.
Thank you so much.
All right, and you don't have a calendar, but could you at least talk about in the near term, before school begins, what sort of activities are planned?
How timely, in your update this week, you will be receiving the agenda for August 27th.
Okay.
We have our staff coming back, working with technology. We're providing them some training, OneNote, OneDrive, some legal training on the do's and don'ts of social media. We've got staff actually doing some of the presentations, but this Friday you'll have a detailed plan in your update.
And that's the Thursday
20
before the students come back?
Correct. All the elementary teachers will be at Dapple Gray. PVIS will have our intermediate and PVHS, focusing also on our math teachers, getting ready for our math adoption. Elementary will primarily be focused on the math adoption in 6-8. But we're continuing to look at our other curricular areas for our training and professional development.
I'd also like to commend the other members of the CI staff out there in the audience, so I know you're integral to all of this as well, so well done.
Okay. The final item tonight, I've heard it said before, never waste a good crisis. And we have a little bit of a crisis, which is the Cox announcement that they were going to change their broadcasting policies. And another piece to that that's probably been less public that Mr. Brodersing is going to talk about, but we think we're going to come out of this with a better product, with more flexibility, and we're going to come out of this better. So it's going to end in a win for us, one way or another. So, Mr. Brodersing?
Thanks, Dr. Austin. In your packet is a little outline of the update from on the status of Cox and their relationship with the cities and the school district. As you know, in October, the franchise agreements that Cox signed many years ago will expire. Part of their agreement we've had for many years is the broadcast of our Board of Education meetings. In addition, they've provided free cable TV service to all our schools. So, with those announcements, many of the city leadership have similar concerns because they broadcast their city council meetings and other events on through Cox. The city of RPV, Carolyn Petru, has reached out and they've been working on a solution. They have offered to continue services on Channel 35 for a reasonable fee. It's $45 per meeting to broadcast. So that's their proposal to all, not only the school district, but surrounding cities. So that is an option. So we can still broadcast our meetings on through the local cable channels and also through Fios, if you're a Verizon Fios customer. So we would be able to maintain that. We do still have, we would still be responsible for recording it ourselves, like we do now, and then to providing the either DVD or a digital upload to them. One of the other options we've looked at, which some of the cities are also looking at, is a live streaming or a on-demand streaming option, which would provide several nice options. Is that we could expand our audience. So for those people that don't have cable TV, or those people that are a little more inclined to watch something on the internet on their computer, they'd also be able to watch it at any time if they weren't able to watch it on cable TV at a designated time or live during the meeting. The other thing is we'll be able to have links on our district website. So what we were thinking is having, because the costs with Cox are pretty minimal, we're considering possibly having both options. We would be able to reach a wider audience of our stakeholders and community members. They'd have more options to view our meetings. And the other option that the streaming provides us is that we would be able to take advantage of those tools for a variety of other resources, our professional development, our training, our messaging, from, so there's quite a bit more we could provide for our staff and for our community. The vendor we've been working with is a local company who has done the PV Penn, I believe, basketball game. They've done some work at Dapple Gray. It's been a really nice solution. So we have talked to them about maybe doing a little bit of a pilot. They would loan us the equipment at no charge, let us try it out, see how a meeting goes also, or an event or professional development. So those are a couple of the options we have for board meetings. Also on this note, we want to tell you that the cable TV service to our schools there will now be a fee associated with that. So that will be $2 per box or per location per month if we decide that we want to continue that service. One of the things, the biggest concern for eliminating that service is we have a lot of our student news programs, so our nationally award-winning recognized programs like Live from 205, Eye on the Panther, some of the elementary schools. We have about 6 campuses that are doing those types of programs. So I've already surveyed our principals to find out what their feedback is if we had cable TV, what the instructional value of that is there a need for that? And I think we would get more value out of a streaming service that could be confined to just within our school community, within our parents, and it could be on demand. So it would be nice. One of the examples he gave was that at one of the schools this company works with, they do daily announcements, and parents could tune in if they wanted to on the internet. So we have quite a bit more options there, and I think our next step is to try a little pilot at no charge to see what everyone thinks about that.
So, so if I'm at PV High, and I don't have one of, anybody who has Cox has to have one of those $2 boxes now.
Right.
You can no longer plug your TV right into the cable in the wall unless you want to look at a blue screen. And I don't even think it's that. I think it's static. So that, because it's a digital signal now, you have to have the little box. All right, so if I don't have that little box and I'm in PV High, why couldn't I, isn't there some explain to me why I need the box to watch Live at 205.
The coax infrastructure at the school, all that equipment was originally purchased through Cox.
Okay.
And it also provides all the local channels and other things. So we wouldn't be able to, there's some technical things I'd have to explore with Cox further.
Okay.
And I think the idea would be instead of going to a channel, and also we have TVs, there's quite a bit of a cost when you start thinking as TVs get old to replace televisions. So what we really need to look at is the bigger picture is, do we really want to be purchasing new TVs for every classroom?
Right.
Where we could just say they already have a projector and an internet connection. Instead of turning on the TV, they would just go to a link and watch live from 2
That's certainly a cost that we have to consider. That's
right. It would
you
say
haven't
in the
included
long run
here.
it'd be a cost savings of instead of replacing.
And I would imagine some of our TVs actually still have a cathode ray tube in them.
Yes, we do have some of those old box TVs.
Yeah.
So
Trent, can I ask you a question?
sure.
To me, this is, unless I'm not understanding it right, this is a really big deal.
Yes.
And this is in October.
Yes.
So this is a lot of work. I appreciate your work on this because I'm not so much concerned about the board meeting stuff as I am about schools, that how often, did the principals say how often they would need? So if you use the streaming service, if there's something on, we'll just assume it's all on the History Channel that they want to watch in the class or something like that, does that affect that too?
If they're watching something, for example, like on the History Channel, like something that was live, they would no longer have any kind of television service.
With the streaming service?
No, if we got rid of the cable TV service. With the streaming, they could go to, say, for example, the history,
.com or
YouTube or
whatever.
website or anything that's digitally already on the web.
So the principals are recommending that we use the streaming service, is what you're saying?
I think the biggest concern they have is that it's a little bit mixed. Their biggest concern is that they are able to continue watching the student news programs that have
It's
become so popular.
without any hiccups?
Without any hiccups. And the
I
other
agree.
option we have is, if we want any transition period, we could always, for those schools that if we need any more additional time, we could, for 2 months while we gear something up, we could work with
That
Cox
was
or
my
seek an
question, too.
extension or
So,
something like that.
To me, that's a priority, is to keep
Right.
those, you said there were 6 schools, those schools
Right.
doing what
That's my
they're doing.
biggest priority.
Okay, thank you so much.
welcome.
This is a big deal.
So when do we have to make a decision on any of this? Or
Well-
when would we look for a staff recommendation?
We have a, I can bring that back to the next meeting. We have options, the cost for Cox for the board meetings is minimal. So we can continue status quo without any streaming if we wanted to until we decide to do that. For the schools, I think we would either have to make a recommendation to purchase services for those 6 schools on a month-to-month basis until we find a permanent solution or a streaming solution. Or we can, I can begin the pilot, which I'd like to do, to see how this, and have the vendor walk out go to the school sites, talk to our leadership teams and our video production teams to really get a feel of what their thoughts are. So I think I'm going to be reaching out to him tomorrow to after giving you the update.
So then you're going to come back with a recommendation to us based on the information you presented tonight?
I'll provide more information in another update, and then what I'll do is I'll be meeting with the school sites, get some additional feedback, provide that to you in the September meeting. We can make a recommendation, and we'll have some time to gear it up.
I want to share that I think we're long overdue for internet streaming for our meetings, and if some of our goals are about communication and transparency, purposeful innovation, it's hardly even innovative anymore, right? We just need
Right.
to make sure that people besides those that have Channel 35 can see our meetings when they want to watch them on their own time, just like everything else on the internet, so.
And I want to point out, too, that one of the reasons why we're not recommending just going to a streaming-only service for our board meetings is several people have pointed out that sometimes some of our community members don't always have, sometimes our older citizens may not have the computer technology or the comfort level with watching something on their computer screen as they would as just turning into a channel. So we're trying to hit all of our
Sure.
stakeholders.
But that hasn't been our problem. Our problem's been the opposite, right? We've been on television. We need to make sure we're
Right.
hitting all the other folks that are comfortable with watching on their
You
own
can
time.
stream other things.
Yeah,
So
we can stream
Stream the Penn PV basketball game or
Absolutely.
whatever.
That's what we're hoping, is we can really expand into other areas.
That'll
that-
give the students more opportunity to do,
Innovative.
Interesting
Parent
things, too.
meetings, professional development, we've heard a lot from our parents. It's hard to come to a meeting at 7 o'clock after I work all day, but it'd be great if I could just tune it in and watch that guest speaker that talked about safety or digital citizenship or bullying or anything like that. So that's a.
And then are they archived? Can
Yes, they can be archived, they could be shown the day after, so if our incentive is to have people come to attend, we could either do it live or say it's on delay and you can watch it at any time after.
Okay.
They're going to want to see the food services presentation
might.
on their own time.
You know, Trent, I appreciate you bringing this forward at this time without us having to make a decision right here and there, so we can think about it.
Sure.
And you can go out and get some more information from the field, and then when you come back with your recommendation, we'll all have had time to, our subconscious minds think about, how we want to go on this. I really appreciate having the advance notice, so thank you.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
The streaming costs per subscription per school. Monthly streaming per subscription per school, $1,800. So $1,800 for Valmonte for each month, $1,800 for,
It's
Vista
it's
Free.
$150 per month, I'm sorry, and it's $1,800 for annual.
so it's annually times the
annual.
number of schools.
Right.
So
And-
so the cost is roughly the same as the $2 cable boxes.
Right, but You have to remember too that some of those schools don't have any student news program at all. So all they have is cable TV. So I wouldn't recommend putting in a streaming service if they're not streaming or recording or doing anything from the school at this time. So let's take any elementary school. If they don't have that solution now, I wouldn't recommend spending the dollars there. I would focus on the first 6 schools, PV High School, Peninsula, Tapple Gray, Solea, those schools that actually have a program so they are uninterrupted service. And then I think as other schools want to develop something, then that's the option.
Oh, but, so maybe I don't understand then. So I understand that for something they're providing, but for the schools that don't have that now, but have the TVs and the Cox, you're recommending you stay with the TVs and the Cox? Or they have nothing, so they don't access?
I think, to be honest, the feedback I'm getting from principals is there's not an overwhelming amount of television that's being watched during the day. So I think if we had to pay for, I think some of those services, some of those things that they're looking for, content would go to things like YouTube. Online resources.
Right, but the point is that if it's in a school that doesn't have the streaming service.
Well, that's streaming out. They would still be able to access anything online. So sorry, I didn't clarify that. That would only be saying, I want to show something from the school out to the public. Sorry.
Well, I'll also say, when Cox, I have a number of TVs in the house, and when Cox said you have the $2 box, I went out and bought an Apple TV for, like a guest room. I don't need the cable in there, and if they want to watch YouTube or, how many things, there's so many things on that Apple TV that I just connect to the internet and connect the TV to the Apple TV, and
we do have those in
bada bing, and that was like $60.
Right. And there's no monthly fee for that.
That is true.
So it's when you start looking at the scale of just having television service, it's pretty expensive just to say, oh, well, and even now people say, well, it's nice to have news. You can get all that online. If there's an event in the South Bay that, it's quicker usually anyways.
So if I understand correctly, the monthly cost for the cable TV is $17,280 for all schools.
That would be the annual cost.
That's the annual cost.
Right, and that's a pretty conservative estimate because there are other rooms. I looked at classrooms but there's offices, there's other locations, there's, locker room, sports team room, things like that where we would, have to get an actual count of those.
And that's why Larry said the monthly streaming at $1,800, the annual cost is approximately the same for the streaming as it
Well,
is.
it's actually less because and that's what I was trying to get at, trying to understand the streaming. The streaming is streaming out, so the 6 places that stream out are $1,800 a year times 6, roughly $10,000 versus the 17.
And if somebody said, well, I really have it built into my curriculum that we need to have cable TV in my classroom, isn't that a $2? It can only be one classroom at the school, correct?
It can be as many classrooms as you want.
Yeah, but I mean, if we go
Right.
to the extreme.
Yeah, if somebody said, I have a special, for example, if you had an after-school program, say Kids Corner said, this is part of our.
They get the $2 box and
Right.
it goes on their bill.
All right, so we'll look forward to it
Yeah,
coming back.
great.
Thank you. All right, so report of board members. Barbara, do you have
I don't have anything to report,
on SoCal ROC or otherwise?
or otherwise, or it's SoCal ROC.
All right, so Malcolm, the Technology Advisory Committee, or
Nope.
anything personal?
Nothing to report? Either way.
Linda?
Quickly that our first policy meeting was very educational for me because we're reviewing the policies, but I'm also learning in very great detail what they are. And there was a lot of great staff work that went on to educate all of us and do some thinking. It wasn't scintillating, and nobody would probably want to watch that online live.
Never.
But I appreciate all the
Never.
work.
We can have the painting dry channel.
Yeah, exactly. But it's important to
Watching
do.
catch
And
up
so I just
drip
want to
out of the
thank
bottle.
the staff and my fellow board members for helping me get through the first process.
All right, Tony, I think we have some School Facilities Board Subcommittee updates.
Sure, the School Facilities Board Subcommittee met on August 6th. I'm here to let my colleagues know and the public that we've been working with legal counsel, actually, a new lawyer with specific expertise in school facilities. Been working on with Lydia's, actually I shouldn't say we, Lydia's been doing the work and we've been helping guide. Developing a spreadsheet of comparable costs of the different school facilities across the campuses and then also across nearby districts. On September 9th, at that meeting, we are planning to have a full discussion on fair use and kind of a philosophical discussion about things like filming on school property, the potential of renting out our parking lots, new legislation that actually would allow alcohol to be served on school property for folks that have rented out that property. And we will have more information for you to review before that September 9th meeting. So it's kind of a foreshadowing of things that are coming. And I think we need to really kind of figure out where we're at individually and collectively on some of those issues before we move forward.
Yeah, there's sort of a two-prong approach. One approach is dealing with the fees and trying to take the new law, the approach the lawyers that we're using now recommending follows doing an economic analysis of our own costs, which we've talked about a long time, but we've never really done. So it's actually giving a framework and a format for that. It requires a bunch of work. There's some art. It's not all science, but it's done in a structured way that would pass muster if anyone came to look at it. So they're doing the preliminary work. It takes a lot of time. They're doing the preliminary work, and
Should also give credit to Chris and, help me out, Lydia, and Deidre.
well, Chris and Deidre are doing most of the work. Lydia's doing some of the work dealing with the amortization costs, because you have to take the value of the building, amortize it, and so on. But they're doing the calculations, and the first thing we'll look at is a smell test. How does it compare to what every other district is doing now? You know, if we come back and the fee calculation says we should charge $2 an hour for something that everyone's charging $50, maybe we made a mistake in the calculation. Conversely, if it comes back at $200 and everyone's charging $50, maybe we made a mistake in the calculation, maybe we didn't. So it would pass a smell test. Then the separate issue that Tony was talking about, which is the policy, updating the policy. There are some things that the lawyer recommended that we ought to consider, and then some things we have talked about but never really come to a conclusion about. And those are the 4 items Tony talked about. We're going to have those on the board meeting on September 9th. We'll leave as much time as we need to try to come up with, hopefully that night, recommendations as how we want to proceed, because the goal is to finish this by the November meeting at the end, outside, having the policy updated, having the fee structure in place, looking at the fees hopefully available January 1st, 2016.
It's Larry's parting shot.
I'm going to push real hard to get this one done before I go. So Lydia is on board. We've got the time frame. Chris is on board, so it's good. All right, did you have anything? Okay, so the last thing as board president, I just want to acknowledge the fact that today was the filing deadline for running for the school board, and I want to thank the 4 candidates that I know about by looking at the LA County Registrar's candidate filing status. Linda Reed, Don Lindsay, Barry Andrew Rondinella, and Suzanne Seymour for signing up, putting your name out there, going through the process. A lot of people fight and die for the right to vote. And, you know, when we don't honor that by not having an election, it's kind of sad. So it's great to see people putting their name out there, going to work hard. I look forward to hearing all the candidates' views and just getting to sit back and vote. So congratulations to all of you. All right, on to public comments on non-agenda items. We have one, Mr. Ramsey. Ramsey? Your handwriting is about as good as mine, so I can't tell if it's an R-A or R-U. Sorry about that.
All right. I would like to thank the members of the board for giving me the chance to go into algebra. I'm Keaton Ramsey. I'm going into 8th grade at Muriel Lesson Intermediate School. And I would like to send my most sincere gratitude to you for giving me the chance to take the summer bridge course. And I would also like to thank Mr. Chris Kim. He may not be here right now, but he's a fantastic teacher, and the district could use more like him. So, yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Math class is going to get you to be a doctor someday with this handwriting. All right. Special reports, food service and nutrition services department.
Okay, Patrick's going to come up and join me. And he's going to share a year in review in food services with you. And we'll just give the screen a minute to catch up with us.
Was it this time it is? Well, good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to give you an update on the Food Services Department. I know I haven't met Linda yet, but hi, Linda. I'm Patrick Renzi, the Director of Food Service. So I appreciate the opportunity to go through this PowerPoint and show you what's been happening in the food service, talk about where we're going, what we're doing, what's happening now, and where we're going. And just as an overview of the department, we do have a total of 70 employees, 20 are full-time, and then 50 are part-time. We do an estimated 2,450 meals a day throughout our 15 sites. 16 sites actually, because Rancho Del Mar does have lunches that we provide for them. And we do about 350 breakfasts a day. And the one thing that isn't pointed out up there, we added a breakfast program at Ridgecrest this past year. There's actually a need for that. So we're able to accommodate with our current staffing without having to add any more staff. So we're servicing, I think it's like 20 kids every day, and it's not something that is major, but it is helping us to be aware of if parents have that need. So we added that part of the program with this current school year. My last presentation I did, I think I had this as the last thing that we wrapped up with, but I put it as first because I think it's important to understand that students today still have the same menu choices and things that they like from the years gone by, even from when I went to school. You could see the pizza choices, the chicken nuggets. What we do is we poll the kids and find out through surveys what they want, and it seems to be always the top choices are what's listed here. If you scan down to number 8, it falls down on the list, but we actually do make the spaghetti and all of our pasta products from scratch. I mean, we buy the pasta, but we make the meat sauce and we make meatballs from scratch. There's some items that didn't show up there, but like Sloppy Joe's, chili, and some other items that we do make from scratch. Like we do meatballs with spaghetti. If you see it on the menu, if you ever look, we do make 2,400 actual meatballs from scratch. So those items don't appear, but those are important that we realize that we do take the time to make them, and our staff does that it's just a good thing, but it won't appear up on the top of the list as we go forward. This is through high school rankings, but really the high school kids, when you go out and really talk to them, they really want more food, more choices, and more healthy choices. So, but they rank this same way also.
I have to tell you, spaghetti with meat sauce was my favorite when I was in elementary school buying, and I still like it today. That cafeteria spaghetti can't be beat.
Actually, the one that's really surprising is when I was a kid, Hamburger Day was by far the biggest day, and hamburgers don't even make the list anymore.
No, they don't. They want cheeseburgers, but the hamburgers. And if you look at that list real quick, I'm sorry, like some of the items, we went to a manufacturer and asked them to make us a hot dog that's made totally out of chicken. So we have a product from Hoffy that is made out of 100% chicken breast with just a moderate of fillers. So they're not actually getting a hot dog that you would purchase at the store. So some of these items, they look like overly processed, but believe it or not, they're minimally processed. I think the biggest thing that's happening in the food service, and if you read it in schools, is the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act, which Michelle Obama initiated back in 2010, which was voted into law and enacted in 2012. When Harry Truman with Congress in 1946, implemented the National School Lunch Program, which we've been following, this implementation of the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act actually is the major change that's happened in this program over the years since 1946. There have been changes, but this has been the biggest change. Basically, before this was enacted, we were following certain things. We were following guidelines to make sure kids had so much protein every day, so much whole grains, so many different things. Basically, what this act did was make us do it. So now we have to serve those items, and if you Google it on the internet, you'll find out so many varying points about this act and how good it is and how bad it is. So it's important to understand that right now we're mandated to provide low sodium, whole grain rich products, which are, if you eat whole grain at home, or if you haven't, try it. You know it's a different profile from regular enriched pasta. That's one of our harder items for get the kids to eat because it looks different, the texture's different, it holds different when we transport it. So it's important to understand that that is a hard thing to get through. We try and test it at the kitchen to see how we can make it better so it transports well. Also, too, with this regulation, now we're mandated to have calorie groups by students, by student ages. So it wasn't enforced in the past, but it was recommended. Now we have to do it. The other, the other part of this that's important is fruits and vegetables. Before, we used to put fruits and vegetables out. Now fruits and vegetables have to be on a child's plate when it leaves our establishment to be able to be considered a complete meal by the government. So if they take it and they throw it in the trash, that's kind of what our problems are. But when they do leave, we make sure that they have it on their plate or they go to a salad bar and get what they need. So that's very important. Also, too, part of that, it's a very micro part of it, is we have to put out so much of an orange vegetable each week. We have to put out a green vegetable. So all of those items now have to be in the salad bars or put on the plate to meet the requirements. So it's very, very stringent, very mandated in the sense of very detailed oriented. So it's very important that, we have to follow these rules. The biggest thing, though, is the biggest challenges are the sodium and the whole grain to get the kids to have the appeal that they like the food.
Patrick, how is non-compliance dealt with? At the end of the day, where does the rubber meet the road if all of a sudden you decide, or someone decides, to put something on the plate that doesn't meet the guidelines? I mean, what are the consequences?
The consequences are withholding our federal and state reimbursements if it's found out that we are serving products that don't comply with the regulations.
It's a huge fine too, right? I mean, I've worked with organizations outside of the district where, like a summer program, and if you aren't in compliance, they're going to know about it, and you're going to get audited, and there's a big fine attached.
Well, we get audited anyways, and that's later on in the presentation, but I think it's about who shows up, what they find. The state, quote unquote, is trying to be user-friendly with our districts. If they're finding discrepancies, they're letting us have a corrective action plan. Because sometimes we get products from manufacturers that don't meet the requirements, and we may put it out because we have to serve something for that day for those students. So that's an extreme case. But all of our items that we purchase do meet our requirements, but the ramifications are that we would be in jeopardy of losing any federal or state funding, and there could be fines that are assessed with that also.
Well, my question comes from people asking me, don't these rules just apply to those children that we serve that qualify for free and reduced meals? And I say, no, but I can't tell you the law. I can't point you in the direction of exactly where the code is and, where these, what the implications are if you're out of compliance.
Right, no. If we are on the National School Lunch Program as a district, every student who eats in our program is supposed to receive what's required.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing, too, I'm going to add to that is you can't segregate the kids that are on the National Lunch Program. So you can't say those kids on the National Lunch Program, you can buy from this serving line, everyone else can buy from this serving line, and you've got Gatorade and the chips and everything that all the kids love to eat, and then you got these kids here, and we're saying you can only buy these foods. So you can't have any kind of separation, and that way the kids that are on the program can go through the line basically anonymously, and no one knows that they're
So
on
the
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 program.
practical reality is the only way you're not part of the program is if you do not participate in the
opt out.
National School Lunch Program. So what is the option for doing that, and what's the ramification?
Well, I'll go ahead with that, Patrick. Actually, Patrick and I have been talking about that, and we thought, well, what if we just do the high school kids? Because that's where we need to get them to eat and not wait till the end of the day or leave campus. And our à la carte sales have gone down considerably. But what that would mean is if we opted out of the free lunch, the program, we would still need to provide a way to feed those kids that would qualify for the program, and hope that the increased sales in our à la carte would make up for that. So hope that by bringing back all the popular foods that the kids like, will generate enough revenue to cover the kids who would qualify for a free or a reduced meal, and then still make money. But the other little pieces, and I'd be happy to bring numbers back to you if you want to consider it, is our free and reduced kids make up part of our unduplicated count that is used for supplemental grant. Now, it's not a lot, but we don't get a lot of supplemental grant money anyway, but it would impact the supplemental grant. It would impact Title I, Title II, Title III, the federal programs.
Because the federal programs, as a condition of being part of the program, you have to be part of the National School
Yeah,
Lunch Program.
right, you have to always get the number of kids. So if it's something that you want to consider, we can work those numbers, bring them back to you, and you can decide whether it's worth,
But the bottom line is we lose the funding that we get from some of these programs that make it as a mandatory requirement to be part of the program. And in addition, we're still obligated under state law to provide the free and reduced rate lunch out of our budget.
yeah, we'd still need to provide
So
meals.
why is, I'm confused. I don't know if Larry's question kind of impacted your response, Lydia, but has there ever even been a discussion? Is there some sort of, it's a greater cost to actually belong to this program than it is the benefit of all those different programs you mentioned? Why would we even
Well,
consider?
you do get some, the commodities that you can purchase.
Right.
There's some purchasing benefits, but if we were to consider it, I would probably only recommend the high school level, because
But why would we consider it? What's the?
Because at the high school level, we don't get any Title I. We may get a little Title II, Title III, very, very small amount. And the number of kids that are on the free and reduced at the high school are so low that it would not have a great impact on the supplemental grant.
But is somehow belonging or receiving the grant funds, is it the labor involved? Is it the hassle? Why would we even consider just not staying with the way it is? Trying to figure out if there's a fiscal issue, or is it a time management issue? Is it?
I'm not sure I'm following your question, Tom.
I think I do understand it. So the question is, what would be the benefit of not being in the program, basically?
Or is
What-
there a benefit?
The benefit would be that we can serve the more popular foods that the kids do want to eat, that do not meet the requirement, the low sodium, the grains, and so on, which would generate more sales, so we would have greater revenues, and profit would increase slightly. That's,
The bottom line at the high school is that with the new requirements, two things are happening. The foods are becoming less tasty because there's less salt in them, and the serving size, in order to meet the requirements for
smaller.
calories and so on, is shrunk. So you end up having kids that are on the program, whether they're getting a free reduced rate lunch or they're getting something else, it has to be the same program, and they're walking away going, this isn't enough. I want to eat more, and I'm not satisfied with what I've gotten. And that's an ongoing issue across all districts. There's very few districts that have the option to even have the discussion we're having, because almost all of them have way too many free and reduced lunches.
Right.
And I would challenge, I've not heard of a district that has opted out. There may be one, you may know of one or two, I don't know, I've never heard of one.
I've heard of one. And that was La Cañada. They were thinking about doing it, but they're also a Chartwell's account, so they're feeding, they have a contract company, but they were going to pull out because the rates at the high schools were so low. And At Peninsula High, I think our rate is 3% of the kids participate in the free and reduced, and at PV High, it's 2.5%. So it's very minimal compared to the overall student body
So
population.
you have a bigger selection of foods, which maybe you sell more, and you certainly give more what kids want. You still have the option to run the program in a way that you're giving the red and green and yellow vegetables, that you're keeping the sodium requirements down. You're not just throwing out their globo lard to dipped in chocolate and rolled in a marshmallow. I mean, you're still going to run a program, but you have it's a possible option.
Yeah.
And so I had said to Lydia beforehand, before we had the presentation, it'd be great if you could talk about it, because it is something that someone clever is going to figure out to ask the question, and you ended up being the person. Congratulations.
Can we make a note of the compliment from Larry?
And it also would help our outside vendors that are really struggling right now to meet the same requirements, because Kelly's Corner, for example, if we want him, and we do want him on our campus selling sandwiches, he has to meet the same requirements, which is very difficult.
So I have some questions about community-based vendors that go to this, but I don't know if you want to hit something from supporting local economy first before I jump there.
Do you want me to just continue, and then we can
Yeah,
do
you just
that?
go, but
Okay.
I want to get to the vendors.
Okay. So that kind of explains the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act. Some of the requests I get from parents a lot, and even students, is purchasing healthier food options. So a couple of things that we really target is getting food items that are GMO, GMA-free, the genetically modified organisms, which a lot of manufacturers now make. We also have, I'm going to be rolling out a new line from a company, chicken company, no antibiotics. So we're moving towards that. We're moving towards cleaner label products where they may only have like a couple of ingredients in it for when it comes into the kids and until the time the kids actually eat it. So one of our goals is to move forward with that. And, like we've eliminated, I met with some parents when I first started, and their big concern was high fructose corn syrup. I think most of the items we buy, we eliminate that. I don't even look at a spec sheet if it has it, and a lot of manufacturers have moved away from it. So you were taking that into account. Also dyes in foods, anything that we can get that's healthier, that fits this, that premise, so when the parents ask me, I'm ahead of the game. That's my goal. As far as supporting the local economy, what I meant by that, in your handout, there are some local farms we buy from, because I get questions about where does the food come from. And it's in a 250-mile radius, which seems far, but when we live in a concrete jungle, it's hard to get some things that we need. Now, there is the Tanaka Farms, which is in Irvine, which we buy through our produce company. They do purchase some items through them. So that would be the closest venue that we have outside of some of our school gardens, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But when you say local type produce, that's one of the main things that we can purchase locally. Also, too, we're looking at, I'm looking at rolling out in the new year the California Thursday, which all of our menus on Thursday would be locally sourced from California items, which is a state-sponsored program.
Sorry, I did a question. Have we thought about being part of or participate all in the DoD fresh vegetable program?
We do that. We participate that with the state of California. On the next point, the community-based vendors they've always been an important part of Palos Verdes School District, and we continue to support them as we can. Kelly's Corner, Wrap Orient. We will also be adding pickup sticks this year to school choices at the high school, and we also do business with Loxa Bagels, which is a local company.
So can I ask some questions on this? So when those vendors come into the high school, they are clearly selling their own food. Then do we get a percentage of that, or we just are offering the service to our students that they're fed well, and they're fed well, they're going to do well in class?
No, what they do is the company like Kelly's Corner, he'll come to me and give me a price and a contract for that year. And then what we do is we actually sell the product. So we collect the money and then we pay the vendor.
So what if I'm at high school and I want to order pizza, and I order pizza to be delivered?
You want me to go there? Okay.
Sure.
We are actually going to be sending a letter out to our principals as well as home to parents to let them know that no outside vendor food can be delivered to the school by a vendor. So we have kids who have debit cards, cell phones, and will call the nearest Domino's and order pizza for them and their buddies. And we have vendors that pull up and kids go outside and pick up all their food. Now, that's not just a problem for the food services program, but it's also a liability to us because we don't know exactly what they're getting out of the trunk of this person's car or what exactly is being delivered. So we are going to be prohibiting that. I know it's going to be hard to police it. Patrick and I are going to be taking turns and going to the different middle schools and high schools during lunch to try and catch these vendors.
So why don't we do the opposite and try to create the same sort of arrangements?
Because they're not able to meet the requirement.
We
Patrick
know
would
they're not
love-
able to meet the requirement, or no one's ever had the conversation with them about
Oh,
whether
no.
they're interested in meeting the requirement?
No, I've had conversations with them. I just had a conversation with Mr. Kelly the other day. He's not on the fence. He doesn't even know if he's going to come back this year because his sales plummeted. No, what I have is I have a guideline sheet that I've mailed out to all of our vendors for that to be compliant. And I did have like 4 or 5 vendors that didn't come back this year. So they have the option to meet the requirements. Some of them just can't meet the sodium targets and they can't meet the fat.
I think there's an entire underground,
But yeah, I think what Tony's
Yes.
saying is there are places you haven't talked to because how would you possibly know that they're there? But we know that they're there because our
Sure.
kids are at the school.
Okay.
And this guy in this sketchy white van pulls up in front of PVIS and he's unloading stealth chicken burritos or whatever. And so maybe, I think what Tony's saying is maybe we could, maybe they do have a couple items that would fit.
and there's not just guys in sketchy white vans, there's also, all sorts
the guy
of
that I see.
businesses
There's women
that.
in sketchy white vans too. It's not just
But
men.
let me just point out the challenge. If they're going to be part of our program, they have to meet our requirements, and I think you understand. So, for example, a piece of cheese pizza has to be whole grain rich. There's not a whole grain rich commercial crust out there, and it has to have 2 ounces of cheese on it, and it has to have a 1/4 cup of red vegetable. Okay, he's given that to Domino's, he's given that to everybody
And they
that's
can't-
local and said, anybody interested in providing that thing that meets our requirements? And they're not interested, because it's not the way they make the pizza, it's not the way they source in the raw materials and so on. So the only way they're gonna sell pizza is the equivalent of your child bringing their school lunch in a bag.
So I would argue that we should bring this back to a policy discussion because as a parent, let's say, and 2 working parents, I forgot to do lunch and I actually need to get a lunch to my child and I'm going to have it delivered. This conversation is saying you can't do that, but yet, so I just think it needs deeper discussion. I get the fact that it's difficult, but I think, one, I don't want anybody coming in making a lot of money, not following the kind of rules that other people have to do. On the other hand, I also think we might need to think creatively about ways.
But Tony, if you, for some reason, forgot to send a lunch with your child and forgot to send money, you can make a phone call to the school and we could arrange to provide them lunch at school and then you can pay that back.
And the guy who's bringing the shaky yellow van with the
That's
chicken-
Linda's
with-
person.
With the chicken.
Mine is a nice woman in a station wagon.
Okay, so, but the person who's bringing that stuff is competing with our vendor who is on campus, who is providing the
Get
right.
that. That's why I'm saying I think we
That's
should
my
enter in
concern is
some
that-
dialogues.
And also,
Yeah.
you're having middle schoolers especially actually leave campus and just sort of wander off down the block. And that's not a
That's not
safety
safe,
issue.
and that's what we're
That's-
concerned about.
If a high school kid orders a pizza, that's a bad nutrition decision, but probably not a safety issue. But for the younger kids, that's, so, but it's also drawing revenue away from your
Exactly.
vendors that are doing it the right way.
Yes.
And that's,
But if you'd like to share the name and phone number
I
of
will be happy
the
to do
man in
that.
the shady white van, we'd be happy to contact them.
Or any other shady vans of whatever color they happen to be, because just talking to Malcolm, our children graduated many years ago. They didn't have cell phones at the time, and food wasn't being delivered off campus to them, you know.
Barbecue and
If a lunch was forgotten, mom or dad showed up with the lunch or made arrangements with the school, you know, that was the way it worked. So this is a whole new world.
It is.
But it seems like we need to have some control over the food on the campuses.
All right, so we'll have another discussion about it.
Yeah, and if a vendor meets the requirements, I have no problem bringing them on, because that's more revenue for us. So it's not like we're trying to block anybody out. We're just trying to follow the guidelines, because I have vendors call me. I have local restaurants calling me, and they're saying, what are your requirements? I lay them out for them, and I never hear from them again.
Sure.
And I invite them to come in and talk to me, because I want to sell product to kids. That's my goal. And it's not to, like, bar anybody from being on campus. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
Thank you.
Yes. One of the things on the next slide, as you can see, I was able to get up to Peninsula and talk to the kids in the advisory group up there with Mitzi's help. I think there was about 80 kids in the room, and we had a good open dialogue with them, asking them about, you know, I opened with, why don't you buy lunch? And if you do, why do you buy lunch, to make it positive? You know, I have like a whole sheet of things that were wrong with the department, what they felt was wrong, where we could go. So it was a very open conversation that was actually very well done, and I enjoyed talking to them, and I think they enjoyed talking to me and giving me some positive feedback. Some of the things were they wanted more food, they wanted chicken maison, they wanted items that I couldn't get to them, but they wanted other options. So some things we were able to correct right away, and we made changes pretty quick. So.
I vote for chicken maison myself.
If we continue on here, we continue to support our garden program. Silver Spur Elementary seems to be the one that has a good garden going, and they continue to give us items and food service to you know, use and put back. On the next slide, you'll see part of the edible school garden. So the kids grow it, we take it, we clean it up for them, and we put it back on the salad bar and label it, and you can see that they get excited about that. We're hoping some other schools will come on this year and we could support them. Some other items really that I thought were important to point out that I don't know if you realize, but our schools are county health inspected twice a year. We get a rating. We don't get a letter grade like a restaurant or other establishments, but we do get a rating. And all of our sites either get 95 and above. It's usually minor things that happen. So it's important that I tell parents that too, because they wonder about our facilities and what we're doing and how it works. So every school we have actually has that. So it happens in the fall and the spring. I think a big thing this past year that we did is we tried to open up more communication to parents. And if you look through your packet, you'll see some sheets that we sent home with menus and just did mailers for them, so they could feel like, understand what was going on in the lunch program, how things have changed, and kind of where we were going. I think the big one that was well received was Harvest of the Month, where we take every month there's a particular item, an apple or a tomato, and you could actually have a cover sheet, and it tells you what the tomato is good for, how you can cook with it, and I've had some good responses from that. And there was also this overview that I did, so when I go out to talk to PTAs, I hand this one out to them, and they can follow along with me, and I can go over the lunch program, and it seems to encapsulate what I do and what we do as a department. And also in there, you'll see the menus. Those are a big communication factor. A lot of districts are getting away from printing menus, the elementary menus, but we continue to print because the parents actually like to see it, they like to see what's on it, and it's a good way to communicate. The high school and middle school menus that are in there, those are mainly online, so parents will know they could come and check those out.
I'm assuming WJ is whole grain,
Yes,
LF is low fat,
yes,
and low sodium?
yes.
All right. Hooray for me.
Another program that we started this past year, we've done catering in the past, but there is a flyer in your packet. It talks about what I call a food-to-go program, catering program. So we've established that, and that actually has done very well this past year. We did about $32,000 in catering revenue to the district.
What's a typical person that might use that, or organization, or?
Well, we've done a lot here at the district for Joan Romano's group, for the principal
In-house,
meetings
yeah.
in-house. We've done things for Rancho Del Mar. It just depends. We get calls and inquiries, and we're priced competitively to the local market, so. On the last item on this bullet point is the South Bay Cooperative. We are part of the South Bay Cooperative, which is 9 school districts, so it includes Manhattan Beach, Redondo, all the ones in the local area. By belonging to this cooperative, it allows us to purchase things in quantity, which helps keeps our costs down. It also gives me 9 other directors of food service to talk to almost every day, to bounce ideas off of, to see what's going on in their districts, because some of us are similar, some of us aren't. So it's a really good resource, and there's a lot that comes out of this every day, practically. So we're a part of that group.
What is the policy of those districts that have high schools as far as off-campus privileges? Are they similar to ours?
They're similar. I think some of them have closed campuses, but I'm not sure exactly which ones. But they're pretty much similar, and our demographics at like Santa Monica is the same, pretty much the same as ours. So I do believe, I talked to the director there, and the like Malibu High, he has a lot of problems with that because it's an open campus, kind of like, so it makes it tough. So it just depends on each of the districts. This is this Marilest culinary program. What we did this year is we reached out to the teacher at Marilest who runs a culinary program, and we actually brought in the kids to work with my staff and had them an opportunity to cook product, bake product off. We did it over 3 days. We divided up the kids so the groups weren't too big, and it was actually very exciting for them and for my staff. So we got a lot of input from the kids, and they actually got a good chance to participate. To the right there, you'll see that's Chef Eric. He is actually a product of PV Schools. He went through the school system. He's a corporate chef at Nestle, and he's actually become a pretty good friend of mine, and he is willing to come in, and he actually worked with these students and worked with other students in the new year in the culinary programs. His parents actually owned Admiral Risty up here in the peninsula, and they recently, both of them are deceased now, so they sold that business off. But he's a great resource. He'll work with the kids. What I figure we could do is bring him in, and he could talk to students, and maybe we could come up with some recipes that the kids have and just give an interaction, and also bring in some other vendors at the same time. But he's a great resource. On the next slide, you'll see a financial summary of how we finished this year with a plus balance of about $46,000. Even though, as you see, there is a plus balance, there is a lot of challenges ahead. And as we continue to go forward, I'm evaluating staffing at the sites to see how we are staffed versus how many meals we're producing. Also to see where we could better purchase at lower costs. So it's an ongoing process, and it's getting more difficult, but we're able to keep it going and keep ahead of the game.
Well,
Not exactly ahead, but.
no, the trend line is not good.
No.
And it's been continuing, and it's not for a lack of effort, I know. But you either raise your revenues or you reduce your costs. We raised revenues last year. Did we raise them again this year?
Yeah, it was a 2-year raise, yeah.
Okay.
2-year step,
so
yes,
we-
and that
We
helped.
budgeted in that second raise into the current budget. How did this compare with how we budgeted last year? Do you have a recollection? Did we budget to have a loss of $75,000?
No, we budgeted to be close to that 100,000 mark.
That was my recollection too. How have we budgeted for this year?
We lowered it.
Yeah.
I don't have it here, but we did lower it.
Because, I mean,
Yes, because we are in a downward trend, yes.
yeah, and I know you're very good at what you do, so I know you're aware of it, but it is a big challenge. So if we've already raised the revenues, so the only other thing you can do is cut costs. We're already in buying groups. You're in the South Bay Co-op, which is part of the super co-op, right?
Right.
I mean, so you're in the biggest buying group in the state. You're hedging as much stuff as you can.
Yeah.
The only other way to cut costs is staff, right?
That's about the last, yes, last.
Is there
batch.
any option to use high school kids? You know, this really does harken
On
back
a
to my-
volunteer,
No, maybe you could do it for class. No, I'm just wondering, when we're staffing at the high school, for example, and you have 10 kids at Penn High, 10 staff at Penn High, or 3 staff, or whatever the number is, the staff's coming in for a certain period of time, right?
Yes.
And some is prep work, some is cleanup work, and some is, there's a small period of time when it's very busy.
Right.
So if it's an option and if you have, you're staffing with 6, but you really could use 3 to set up and 3 to clean up, and you have 3 that you really need for that 1 hour or 45 minutes, does it make any sense to consider using a paid
ROP,
student or something?
No, you can have student workers.
To be there for the 1 hour that you need where you have the peak demand. Maybe a clever way of lowering your costs some, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the things that Patrick and I have been talking about, and he's going to look at real closely, is because we're producing fewer meals, obviously, the labor hours have to be adjusted accordingly, too. So unfortunately, what that means is a reduction in staff, and we've brought it up with John, and so that's something that we're going to be looking at really closely this year, and it may mean a reduction in staff.
Well, you scratch cook, and so that means you
Right.
have more people at the central kitchen.
Right.
You're turning out a better product than something that's just a heat and eat product.
Right.
But the trade-off is, if you can't afford it,
Costs are high with labor. And we do get help at the high schools with some students, but some students don't want to contribute because they want to leave or they want to do and we even have it at the middle schools, but they're there for 10 minutes. We give them an earned lunch and then they leave. So we do try to supplement that.
but it's relatively challenged.
Yes. So some of the next steps that we're going forward with is, the major one is the administrative review this year. It's going to be in the springtime. This is where USDA and the state come in and land in my office for 1 week and go out to the school sites and double-check everything that we do. So menus, production records, invoices, meal components, and they go over everything, and financial audit, they'll look at our books, that type of thing. It happens every 3 years. It's actually been 5 because of the Healthy Hunger Kids Free Act, kind of set everything back. The state is also struggling to find enough people to do the reviews, so they've kind of pushed us off a little bit. But our turn is up, and it's this spring, so. And there are 4 other districts in the co-op that are happening, also having the reviews, so we're all working together as a group to get this, so we all get the pieces together properly and work together. So it's a big help for me because it relieves some of the pressure in that sense. We're going to expand the culinary program to the other groups. As you saw up there with Chef Eric, what I want to do is handpick a couple of vendors and have them come in and talk to some of the advisory kids at the 2 high schools. If I can do it to the middle schools, I'll also do it to see what the kids want. And I think that would help raise a little bit of participation and revenue. So I think that's a good thing, and it's fun to be with the kids, and they seem to enjoy it. So, and they see the guy in his chef's coat, they get all excited about that too. We're looking at an organic new vendor, so it brings us back around. Fresh and Easy also has now a distribution company, and because they come up to Lanada Bay, I've been talking to the rep, and he wants to actually supply items to the high schools. I haven't solidified it yet, but I'm still working on this. They have items that are approved that meet the requirements. So they have about 10 items. So I'm hoping to maybe put a Fresh and Easy card out at the high schools because that's what the kids want, and I think that would help drive revenue. So I'm excited about that. We continue to move to more sustainable products. We're moving away from plastics. We've eliminated styrofoam. I put that back on here because that's important, and we're even thinking of having the little spork that the kids use made out of a biodegradable material. It's important up here for the parents, the Grades for Green thing that we worked with the schools about recycling, so we continue to move forward with that. The other thing that's really exciting is I'm hoping to have up in the next 3 weeks an interactive website for the parents where a parent can go and look at the items that are being served at each site, and they can click on the item, and they'll be able to have a look at what's in the food, what the calories are, and just to see exactly what we're serving each day. So I'm hoping to have that up by the opening of school. That'll be new for us because everything now is on the website, but it's pretty static. You can't click on any links, but this will give them an option to have more information in front of their, if they want it.
Any additional questions?
I think we've asked all the questions we can come up with. Great
Patrick, great
presentation.
job. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Lydia.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
They're in their badge.
If I'd known that, I would ask
An hour and a half.
I would ask more questions. Make
They
that
got
badge
their
really well earned.
Hour and a half badge.
All right. Don, do you want to address before we have the presentation or afterwards? All right. We're up to the GATE program, and we have one public comment, Don Lindsay.
My sister was a different learning student. Each week when the spelling list came home, everyone in our house would cringe because she just couldn't learn the words no matter how many times they were drilled. Crying would ensue for my sister, my mother, and often for me. Eventually, my parents had her tested, and it turned out that she needed special help in learning to do spelling and to do math because she learned differently. Now she's a highly successful teacher with 14 years in tenure in the Austin area. My daughter is a different learning student. We have had a few bouts of crying at our house as well. In the 3rd grade, when the teacher didn't know by the end of the year that she was completely able to read a long chapter book that my daughter wanted to read for the Choose Your Own book report. Doesn't she know anything about me? Doesn't she know that I read 4 books a week? In the 4th grade, when she had to go to reading every day, but we just sit there every day and people take turns reading out loud. I already finished the book by the time we were on chapter 3. When I won't take her to the library 3 times in the same week. We moved here after the 1st grade with a gifted label from our previous district. And when we asked about it, we were told, GATE is our program, and it starts in the 5th grade. We waited patiently, very patiently, given all the crying, and we bought books, lots and lots of books. The 5th grade finally came, and there was no program to be seen. Then I was asked to attend the parent meeting, where I was given a book, and in it we were told, GT kids often learn in a different way and at a different rate. Not that they need more work, but that they need to learn differently. AP classes, by the time they get to high school, are not the answer. More work is not what these kids need. They need to develop their creative thinking and processing skills. I love the idea that we have a different math class by the time the kids get to middle school for those who are gifted in math. They have the ability to start thinking differently about math. I hope that something will come about for those gifted in language arts as well. And in the meantime, please, I implore you, use the GATE budget. Allow the program to be developed. We have a population that we are underserving, and it is heartbreaking for them and their parents that they can't get the education that they are seeking. It is our job as a district to provide it if at all possible. We have the means now. Please let us not deprive them of the education that they are craving.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. I'd like to bring Joan Romano up and thank Dawn for your comments. I think you'll see that Dawn is part of our GATE committee, and so is Debbie here, and Dr. Criley. Thank you for being here this evening, too. Dr. Criley is one of our parent volunteers who does a wonderful job in teaching some of our after-school programs, so I just want to thank you for attendance here tonight. So as you can see, we're looking at the revision of the GATE plan. The GATE plan in 2008 was governed under Tier 3 funding, and the accountability and requirements of Tier 3 funding. The Tier 3 funding has expired, so the Local Control Accountability Plan continues to support the GATE, and our district continues to support the GATE students as one of our goals. As you can see, the process began in October 2014. Dawn referenced our GATE Advisory Committee, identified expectations for a 3-year plan, so this is the first year that we're actually changing our plan. Educational services meeting with site administrators, GATE advisors, reviewing the proposed plan, getting feedback from the plan, and then looking at the development of the plan. We presented it to the GATE Advisory Committee and then to our site administrators, and then this evening we're showing you our revised plan. The next slide, I'm going to turn it over to Joan, but before she goes to the goals, a couple things to address our speaker, is that looking at some of the areas that we are focusing on is we will be testing our 4th graders and our 6th graders. Our plan had previously been looking at testing our 8th graders, and now we will looking at the proposal is to be testing our 4th graders and our 6th graders instead of our 8th graders. And Joan's going to go through the different goals. Also, we're looking at a gate support provider at each school. We started that process also within this 3 years revision so that we can address some of the issues brought up by Dawn. So at this time, I'd just like to turn it over to Dawn. Dawn, what's your name? Joan Romano.
Thank you, Dr. Culverhouse.
Rowan Germano.
Rowan Germano.
Rowan Germano, there you go. Well, as you can see, after meeting with the advisory committee and administrators and teachers throughout the year, we finalized the revision with seven goals. And as Dr. Culverhouse mentioned, the gate identification process, goal number 1, did move the identification down from 8th to 6th. Goal number 2 addresses professional development, which will provide teacher training and support to meet those academic and social emotional needs that Dawn was alluding to, definitely embedded in our professional development plan. Goal number 3 for curriculum and instruction, again, to make sure that we are working with our teachers so that they do truly understand what differentiated instruction means. Dawn is right, it doesn't mean more work. And so that also is part of our professional development. Goal number 5, to continue to provide student enrichment opportunities for students to have interaction with like peers, both during the school day and in enrichment opportunities outside of the school day. Goal 6 addresses community involvement so that we can continue to engage our community in supporting this plan, and also to provide parent education opportunities. And finally, to make sure that through the advisory committee, we evaluate this plan annually and revise it accordingly. If you refer to the final page, you'll see the GATE plan spelled out more elaborately, and it does address the budget. You can see at the top that as we knew we were planning for this revision, we knew we had to carry over some of the GATE funds from this year to address the identification in the transition year, because we have to assess, identify, or go through the process for more students. So we carried over some of the money this year, and we have our regular general fund allocation to look at as we look for the first year of this 3-year plan. And you can see how we've estimated what the expenditures will cost for that for each area of the plan. And I think I skipped over goal 4, which was the counseling goal, and I wanted to make sure I pointed out that that goal was something we talked a lot about at the GATE Advisory Committee, and we'll put a plan in place to support those transition years from 5th to 6th and 8th to 9th as students are making scheduling choices, and like Dawn alluded to, the accelerated math classes and those kinds of things, as well as to support them during the year with their scheduling choices. So that was an important discussion piece. Thank you.
And just ask him for any questions.
I appreciate everyone's work on this. There were years where there was no budget, and Mrs. Pastel was really creative in how to. That's where the fee-based programs, I think, started during those times. I'm curious what the reason is why you would change it to 4th and 6th from 4th and 8th, because 4th and 8th give you a nice big gap where kids have the maturity, that opportunity. Is it a test that's available that works better for 6th graders?
Yeah, it really was a conversation at the GATE Advisory Committee that when we identify the students in 8th grade, really as they move into high school, there's so many opportunities with honors classes and APs, so we wanted to identify those kids earlier so we could better support them through middle school.
Okay, I agree. That to me, middle school is really the black hole for kids in this whole continuum that generally are elementary school teachers, because the classes are smaller and they know the kids for a full class period every day. In high school, I think what the kids can do is amazing, but middle school, to see a little bit more for those kids. So that makes sense. That's great. Thank you.
Could you clarify under estimated expenditure goal 3?
So basically, we have students that have exhausted our math courses at our high school. And they attend it used to be called the Education Program for Gifted Youth, the EPGY, and now we're doing the Stanford Online. And I just did a quick estimate, because I'm sure I was going to get that question. And if you take a look at the cost over the last, since 2009, we had 3 students that went from $2,600, 3 students again in 10 and 11, and then it fluctuates. Going down to 14, 15, we had 4 students. That cost us $4,900. We had 4 students. Last year we had 2 students, and this year we have 2 students. So that cost fluctuates with every year, but we address the needs of those students that have exhausted our possibility for our math courses.
Why is it only done for math? I'm just curious. Like, why, there are kids who max out French, Chinese, Spanish, whatever chemistry, I don't know, whatever it is. Could it be, is it just because no one's ever asked, or is it?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question.
Why
We had
is
a
it just for
student.
math?
Well, we had a student that was asking to go into science, but in going back to the high school and working with the counselor and the principal, it was identified that student had choices that were beyond just math. I mean, that student had science opportunities that they had not exhausted.
Okay.
So that's a good example.
Like foreign language or something like that, it's just because no one's ever.
Right, we just use it for the math.
But okay.
But
They go
you
take
know,
college
I only know, go ahead.
But if they're taking college classes, they're paying for it themselves. I'm curious why the district's paying for math, but not for whatever else kids would.
I asked that same question
Okay.
because we require 4 years of math at the high school. And so if a student gets to if they've exhausted all math possibilities and they can't take that 4th year, they have
But
to
you don't
take
have
4
to
years of
take
math.
4 years of
Correct.
Chinese or whatever.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Good question, thank you.
Is this the best way to do it? Not that I have anything against Stanford.
It seems to be working for our district, as you can see the numbers coming through. We've looked at USC.
USC's stellar
Just
math.
teasing.
But I mean, that it works for these kids, and
Correct.
it's,
Yes, it does.
yeah.
And like I say, we have been using this process, and not that doing things that
I
we've
think it
always
was
done, but
around
we've
when
been,
we had
had this in
kids.
place since 2009.
It's a good program.
I have a couple of questions about, I'm assuming this has been especially tricky considering the fact that the state essentially said, we're no longer going to fund this, but we want you to maintain this program for your students with your local control fund, your LCAP.
Correct.
It's also been, I'm assuming, especially problematic that we haven't had standardized test scores coming back the past couple of years.
Correct.
So, and it's even more problematic when every parent feels like their student is gifted and talented.
Well, they are, just in different ways.
Yeah.
Exactly. So historically, there's actually been a state, right, assessment that's gone along with which students. So it's one thing to say, oh, I'm GATE, meaning my child is doing better in math or English or the what percentile. It's been another thing for the state to actually sanction that student as a GATE student. Is that correct, or?
There's
Or the district based on
the
the
district,
state's-
yeah, based on what the state's criteria under their former plan was, that you had to have some kind of identifying
Sure.
criteria. And we will still have identifying criteria. The one thing we're doing differently in this plan
Sure.
is in the former plan, we use the state standardized tests to identify those students that would then go on to take the ability assessment
Sure.
and achievement assessment. And in talking with the GATE advisory and talking to districts in our area,
Sure.
other districts,
That was my next
we're
thing.
moving to a universal screening. So all 4th graders will take the assessment. And then the same thing in 6th grade. All 6th graders who were not identified in 4th grade will have the opportunity. So that's called the universal screening, and that's one of the changes
Sure.
with this plan.
So I realize that it's, and I don't mean this to sound the way it does, but it's not a lot of money compared to the type of, budget we're talking about in terms of our curriculum and the curriculum and instruction. It's more than I think what it was or what it's going to be if this is implemented exactly as is. However, there is still a disconnect between the assessment that's being used and the curriculum that we're teaching. It's kind of a trap right now, meaning, so the good news is we've settled on a universal assessment that all students will take. But we're still in this window where it's the same conversation we had about the math assessments for who should be in accelerated math or not. It's the same thing, meaning the students being assessed using this Otis Lennon school ability test, but yet our curriculum may not actually be in line with it. I'm just raising it. I think the average student, I think all students in PV are getting a great education, but I think for the folks that, I can imagine, if this was something I was really honed in on, that's the argument I would be making, and I would be pushing it, just like I pushed before when it seemed as though there wasn't a universal kind of assessment that was going on. It seemed much more subjective based on the school sites and kind of even maybe the own teacher's interpretation of what gifted and talented was. So I similarly appreciate the work. I think it's moving towards exactly what I was talking about with a district-based assessment that I'd want to see in all the subject matters. It would help us as well.
Absolutely.
But it seems like there's probably further discussion to be had with both parents and teachers about what are some really creative ways we can be challenging all students, but especially our students that seem to have been mastering a certain standard or a grade level curriculum. I can't help but think about something like the culinary arts that, wouldn't it be amazing if students that were really able to operationalize the standards in the school cafeteria around culinary arts with math or science or language. There seems to be, and I know you guys are working about as hard and as fast as you can, but I think in terms of our number one goal about being purposely innovative, there's some room for us to really, Chuck Miller grants. Wouldn't it be interesting if some of those Chuck Miller grants were tied to those ways in which we could link that learning?
And I think the goal that talks about the coaches at the site is a way to help us get feet on the ground at the sites to be engaging in those conversations and bring those ideas to us, and the site grants that we reference in here. It's exactly that kind of thing that through the advisory committee that we want to see happening. So I think that direction is a way to, or that decision to get those coaches is a way to move in exactly that direction.
And I know, Joan, because of when you were a principal, right, that philosophically you believe not only is it great for the gate kids, it's great for all kids. I similarly, I think sometimes when you have a student or a son or daughter that has been identified or gifted and talented and you're frustrated that you don't feel like they're getting everything they want, sometimes we're not always also thinking about the whole student body. I don't think it has to be an either or. I think there is a win-win kind of curricular, pedagogical solution there. So I would just encourage us to keep having the conversation and keep pushing it.
And, of course, at our policy workshop on Monday, Tony, GATE was one of our policies and administrative regs, so that's going to be coming back for even that's not so much of an operational kind of issue that Tony's talking about. That's kind of 25,000 feet, but there's some things that the state are thinking about in delivering that. So we'll be hearing about this again when that comes back to us.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Good presentation. All right. Elementary school enrollment.
I'm going to turn this over. We're going to do a little tag team effort, but we're going to start with, we're starting with Trent or Dr. Bose.
Dr. Bose will.
All right, Dr. Bose, get us kicked off.
Thank you for the opportunity to present on staffing updates for the 2015-16 school year. Enrollment and staffing walk hand in hand. I presented on certificated and classified investments in staffing at our June 25th meeting. Trent followed in July with an enrollment presentation, and we're in August leading up to the beginning of the 15-16 school year with a staffing update. Okay. Some important considerations when staffing for elementary schools include a focus on helping keep families within their school of residence, within the attendance area in which they reside. We also have an interest in forming classes so that families are able to stay together at the same school site. Combination classes are, a function of class formation at the elementary level, and we're working hard to minimize those. They're dependent on enrollment, and we always have lots of kids coming in and some leaving as we come up to the beginning of the school year. Right now, we're looking at reducing the number of combination classes at elementary from 10 to 8 combination classes. So we've been carefully monitoring enrollment and trying to make appropriate placements. The 24-to-1 class size reduction ratio for TK through third grades is perhaps our most important consideration in forming classes in the lower grades. It's imperative that our 24-to-1 average stay below that threshold in order to maintain that important funding. We have a number of employees who send their children to our district through the employee permit process, and families who work within our district sending their children to our schools through the Allen Bill process. We're very proud of our special education inclusion program and the high percentage of students who spend part or all of the school day, those who receive special education services, and the general education program. And as we staff schools, it's important that we keep in mind the available facilities. Some of our schools have plenty of classroom space, and others are more constrained in the number of classrooms they have available. At the secondary level, we have a focus on staffing with an eye to ensuring good access to college and career courses, AP courses. And with AP courses, we always have a percentage of students who drop down to the regular course within the first 5 or 6 weeks of school. And because of that, we need to staff and enroll students in those courses appropriately to make sure there's some buffer room there. We know our high school students can attend either high school, so program equity among the schools is an important consideration when we're recruiting employees and developing programs. We want to offer plenty of elective opportunities and the same permit privileges for employees and those who work in the district are available, and with similar considerations for special education, students receiving special education services and constrained facilities. Let's take a look at how we compare with some staffing comparisons between the end of last year and walking up to the first day of school this year. Last year we were at 442.4 full-time equivalent positions, and we are looking to add 4 more positions to our TK-12 teaching staff this year. We've been working hard to provide more efficient services with regard to certificated support staff. Those are staff that include special education and resource teachers, school counselors, nurses, psychologists, adaptive PE teachers, and the like. And we have been able to create some efficiencies, reducing from 134 to just under 133 full-time equivalent positions. We want to especially recognize our counseling ratio and give a nod to the Peninsula Education Foundation for their contribution to allowing PVPUSD to have a student to counselor ratio of 360 to to 1, which is really 3 times below better than the California average. Nationwide, the average is about 471 to 1. So we're doing better than the national average, but 3 times better than the California average. This is a very busy time for the Enrollment Center. They're continuing to enroll students on a daily basis. Residents, employee privilege, and Allen Bill families are notified of placement. We are continuing to monitor staffing ratios, and again, those are based on enrollment. And from time to time over the course of the school year, we need to make adjustments generally at the secondary levels or with certificated support staff to address those changing enrollment needs. We're also carefully monitoring the status of AB 306, that's our public school choice for military families stationed in California bill. And we will provide updates on that as they occur. Right, so I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
And what's the latest kind of, I know enrollment's not done, but we're a couple weeks away now. What's the latest enrollment total numbers compared to last year?
Sure. So right now, on a point-to-point comparison, we are up 3 students in elementary at 4,482. We are also up 9 students at high school, coming in at 4,323. Our dip is in intermediate school, where we are down 133 students. So all in all,
What's the total?
120.
intermediate is 2,665. So that totals 11,470 students, down 121 from a point-to-point comparison from a year ago. Having said that, we enroll an awful lot of kids coming into the last few weeks of school.
So I'm just trying to figure out, and I know it doesn't always, the math doesn't always equate to what it looks like at a school site, but essentially we're down 121 students right now, but we're actually up on 4 FTE and potentially adding more. How does that work?
Sure. And as I described in June, we really look at the staffing in terms of investments and creating efficiencies. So all in all, we are up by just under 3 FTEs, and the headlines for those are we have reduced combination classes from 10 to 8 in elementary. That requires some extra staffing. And we have created some efficiencies in the certificated support staff.
Okay. Is there any chance of, without creating false hope, a further reduction in combination classes, or we need to see kind of how the final numbers fall out?
It's really driven by enrollment. And the 24 to 1, while it provides some significant advantages for us and resources through the extra funding, also makes staffing more challenging and enrollment placement more challenging. Trent's staff and Rick and I are meeting daily on the enrollment and staffing numbers, and are monitoring all of that very closely, and we're in touch with principals on a daily basis how any changes are affecting their school sites.
So I'm assuming you'll come back to us as soon as the school year starts, kind of what that looks like, and
Sure.
it would be nice to be, if at all possible, I'm sure you guys are doing this already, proactive versus, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago where
Last year.
it seemed to catch us by surprise, but.
Well, Don, maybe you could address the one.
I'd like to add just a couple things to this. First of all, great staff work here so far, but my first meeting last year was less than spectacular as far as people talking about kind of a last-minute feeling on some of the staffing pieces, some of which was fair, some of which was not. But I can tell you, seeing it from this end, the elementary is a tight puzzle. We have a funny combination of small schools, relatively speaking, small schools, relatively close proximity to each other within clusters, and then geographically challenging when you go stretching across an entire district. So when you look at our priorities, it's almost impossible to hit all of them. It's almost impossible to keep all families together, keep them all at their home school, and eliminate combination classes. It doesn't work that way math-wise. And math-wise, you can do 2 of the 3. So we're trying to make those judgments as we go. I've sat in this year with Trent and with Drea, doing a lot of the really, it's fine, it's precise work. But some specific areas that we've made some decisions on this year. For an example, how many times last year did we hear about large PE class sizes at Merrill West? And we compared those and did the work on it, and guess what? We had large class sizes in PE at Merrill West. So this year, we've added staffing targeted to address those issues, so those numbers will be smaller. Another nice thing, when I heard class size issues last year, the most common issue that we heard were large class sizes, specifically in bubbles at the intermediate level. Heard them in science at certain schools or in math at another. Well, keeping the staffing the same and dropping 100 kids has created, in essence, a class size reduction. So we're monitoring those numbers closely. The other step that we've taken that we haven't talked about is I've asked Dr. Culverhouse and Dr. Bose to meet with this year each of the intermediate principals. They've already started these meetings, and we're sitting there going through class by class, section by section, teacher by teacher, every class size right this minute. And where we see bubbles, we're adding staffing. Where we see extreme low class sizes, we're asking those questions as well, because we don't want to be foolish with our money. But I think the proactive work looks a little different. So we should have a better first day result. And the last thing I'll say about combination classes is we've also done work with combination teachers to be better prepared to start the school year with a better plan for those combination classes. In fact, when we looked at placement results for math scores district-wide last year, it's a little counterintuitive. Our best results district-wide all came from combination classes. So interesting enough, when people are quick to nod their head in agreement that it's a detrimental educational learning environment, the numbers don't tell that story at all. And now part of that is because those kids are selected for specific reasons. There's more. There are multiple factors in this whole thing. But our training and upfront piece is much better this year. Communication with parents is better. In fact, Malaga is sending out a letter to people who had volunteered for, Silver Spur. Silver Spur is sending out letters to people who volunteered for combination classes to let them know that they're eliminated this year at that site. Just worked out that way. We added a teacher late at Malaga to, again, not only eliminate a combination class, but allow space for new families in a school that's relatively centrally located. So we've done the best work we can, but now it just depends on who shows up and how tall they are. So we'll keep you updated.
Thank you.
Don, or maybe Trent, do your enrollment numbers include Allenville at this point, or are we still holding back a little bit on Allenville?
Yeah, the numbers that we have for you tonight include the Allenville families. We've notified them. The Allenville are the last families to be placed. We prioritize our residents. We anticipate that we are going to get additional enrollment. Kind of the interesting development at intermediate school is we have not really had a lot of summer enrollment here at the district for intermediate school students. So we're hoping that we're going to see that when the schools open next week, that there are going to be a lot of walk-ins. So there's some, we're really keeping a close eye on that. We also are still getting people that are moving to the area that will be signing leases. And I think I mentioned before, we're hearing a lot of feedback from families that The housing market is a tough
No, it's
cookie
awful
right
here.
now. It's expensive for people, even for rentals. So I think a combination of those factors are playing a role, and we'll see how the next 2.5, 3 weeks develop.
Is the exiting fifth grade class entering sixth grade class abnormally small? Does that account for part of it, or?
You had a large eighth grade class last year.
So if you had a large eighth grade and the incoming sixth grade is smaller, you're going to show a drop.
And we have
It's about 130 student difference.
That could be, that's your difference right there.
And we've
the
had
intermediate.
smaller kindergarten classes for the last 5-6 years, so it would make sense that where it's now catching up to us.
That
Yeah,
could be
last
part
year
of
we
it.
had 999 eighth graders, and looking at this year, we are looking at 864 right now. So you can see there's a gap right there. So we had a kind of a bubble class last year going into high school. Now matriculated
So
on
was
high
the
school.
eighth grade class exceptionally large?
Last year was exceptionally large.
Okay,
Yeah, you're
so
absolutely
it's
right.
Going to the system, okay, so that's part of the, what's going on here.
Interestingly, our kindergarten enrollment is higher this year than last year, and that's an
a good
important
sign.
turnaround.
That's the best sign.
I
of all.
high five those ladies and gentlemen at the mall.
No, me.
When I
I
see
have
the
a kindergarten.
strollers. High five.
Pass out a card.
Pass out babysitting cards, yes.
Can I have just a 1-minute overview for folks that aren't familiar with it with AB 306? And is there any kind of insight into when it may or may not be up for signage?
I can do that quickly. AB 306 was introduced by our Assemblyman Hadley. It's been in really pretty consistent and good communication with our school district because it could impact us. It does a couple things. Bottom line, all it does is it eliminates the ability of a district to block the release of a student who lives in military housing to another district. It does not mandate that another district receive those students, but it does open a nice door for us for good consideration if that's something that our board would like to consider for military housed, active military housing. Where is it right now? Last I talked to the Assemblyman, he said it could be finished up as early as the end of September. There's actually a timeline on it, so we're going to know one way or another here pretty soon, but it has sailed through every other piece of this, so we have every reason to believe that it's going to pass.
And if it were to pass on the timeline that currently exists, there's potential then that we could receive students this school year, or is it something that will be pushed off until next fall?
Now, we would not receive any students unless our board amended our practice. So we would bring that back in policy so that we would actually talk about, is this something we want to open up to? And then when the laws, well, the bill, it currently is written that the military families would have to request placement in January of the year prior to arriving. That's a little interesting. It almost flies in the face of the whole reason you do this. They don't know in January. But after speaking to the Assemblyman, he wasn't concerned about that, and his staff wasn't concerned about that timeline. He said, okay, that's the timeline that the bill can outline, but we could have our own policies about anything as far as our ability or desire to accept. We could accept all, a lottery, we can limit, and that's something certainly we would speak with our legal counsel about and bring back some recommendations.
So would we bring it back before it actually, we wait until it gets passed, which might make sense, or it might also make sense that we actually proactively act knowing it's coming?
If we wanted to include language, which I would believe we would want to, specifically calling out the regulation that allows for that, we should wait until it passes. So I'm not doing staff work on this until it passes. Again, that's not far off.
I might recommend that philosophically we have the same kind of discussion we are about some of the other issues, not right now, obviously.
Well, the governor did sign, and Superintendent and I have talked about this, the governor signed today allowance that if there is a domestic or otherwise someone who serves a household in the district, and they actually, it's
The nanny bill.
yeah, but it's very limiting that the child of the domestic worker would have to live with his or her parent in the home in which they serve to be considered to be allowed
3 days a week.
3 days a week, yeah. So
doesn't-
Like, who's going to monitor, you know, is it 3 days or 4
Not an
days?
issue for us.
I don't know how many children there are that would be living with their parent here and then attending
It
somewhere
appeared
else.
that was written for a very, very specific purpose for a region that is not us.
But
A
do you-
legislator.
But back to the Assembly members' bill, do you anticipate that would require a new board policy that would come down from CSBA? Or would you imagine a current policy would be
No, I
changed?
think CSBA will not be fast on that one. I think that's something we can absolutely carve out and do our own work. There's already priority language that lots of districts use for transfers, and we could be pretty specific about that. We could do that work.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll have to wait and see
Yeah.
when school opens what the
Yes.
final figures are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. M1, budget revision.
M1, budget revision is to incorporate the state-adopted budget into our budget, and there are not many changes. The effect to the bottom line is a decrease of $137,000. And what that includes specifically is an increase, a decrease in LCFF revenues by $222,000, which is a result of the change in gap funding, and a decrease state revenues for one-time discretionary money of $801,000. And if you remember, when we adopted the budget prior to the final state adoption, there was just the one pot of money that was about $601 per student. Then during the negotiation process for the state adopted budget, they felt that there needed to be money set aside specifically for professional development for certificated teachers. So they took a chunk out of that one-time money and called it educator support and professional development training funding, and are now telling the districts, you're going to get a little bit less of one-time money, but we're going to give you this new pot of money that's specific for professional development. So although we have a reduction in one-time money of about $801,000, we have special money of $885,000 for professional development. There's a few strings attached to it, though. Similar to the Common Core funding, prior to spending the money, we had to have a budget plan at a public hearing, and then we had to track the expenditures, and then we had to file a report, which we just did July 1st, on how we spent the money. So it's very similar. So prior to us spending the money, Dr. Culverhouse already presented the draft for the professional development. We'll have to have a public hearing where the board will approve the professional development plan. Then we'll have to track the expenditures, and we'll have 3 years to spend the money, and at the end of the 3-year period, we'll have to file a report with the state to show them how we spent the money.
Local control.
Local control.
All right, any questions on the revisions?
No.
Okay, have someone make a motion.
Move to approve?
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Facilities update.
Okay, we're going to do something a little different. It may be at every board meeting, we'll have to talk about it. There's not a lot of change over a 2-week period. But in the same place where we used to have the construction status
The
update
one-line
report.
construction status update report?
Yes, we're going to slip in a little bit of facilities update to just do some show and tell and give the board an opportunity to see some of the projects that are ongoing, especially if you don't have the opportunity to get out to the school sites. And so that's what I'm going to do tonight, is show you some of the items that, some of the projects that have been ongoing. The first few that I'm showing you are Eagle Scout projects. We always have many Eagle Scout projects that take place at our school site. We don't have any of our scouts. One scout here.
They got their badge at 8 o'clock.
They got their badge and left. They've done a lot of nice little projects for us, and this one in particular is at Rancho Vista Elementary School. The blue and yellow benches that you see were already existing, and so the Eagle Scout project is actually this little all-weather stage that they created. And it's not complete yet. There will be a skirting that'll go around the base of the stage that will cover the cement footings that you see there. The next project is at Silver Spur Elementary School. And this project included putting down these pavers. So this was a dirt area adjacent to the school garden. And so what they did was they put these pavers down and created a nice little seating area where kids can come out and read a book, or they can hold their outdoor classroom. But this is adjacent to the school garden there at Silver Spur. The next project is what we are calling an amphitheater. And basically, this is the garden there that's at Valmonte for the students in our Transition to Independence program. And what happened here is we had a eucalyptus tree that fell down. And so they cut, we had these various stumps cut, and so the scout designed this amphitheater where they created the different the tiers in the dirt, and they put down bark and used the stumps as seats. And this is now an amphitheater in the garden area.
Looks like camp to me.
Yeah. So you
Camp in the
can
mountains.
see that these aren't real big projects, but it means a lot to the scouts, and it does add value to the sites. And so what we're looking at doing this year is maybe every quarter, invite the scouts in that completed their projects and honor them. So, like I said, not big projects, but very important as nevertheless.
Lydia, can I ask you a question before
Yes.
you move off of the Eagle Scout project? So, I think probably almost every school site has projects that have been done by Eagle Scouts, and some are really amazing and have lasted over time, and others, I think, just, you know, the weather's taken a toll, the stumps, the trees, the roots. Is there any kind of assessment on kind of going back over projects that maybe were done 15, 20 years ago, and what's that process?
Well, Louis, actually, when he's out at the sites, he does keep an eye on them. And if there's something that just needs maybe a fresh coat of paint or something like that, our painters take care of it. I don't know of any that have been a real liability where we've had to remove them. For the most part, they seem to be holding out and may need a little minor repair that our guys can.
So if we come across any, we should just let you know, and then.
Yes, please do. This is just a picture of the 2 condensing units for the air conditioning that we put into the NPR rooms. The picture on the left is Rancho Vista Elementary School, and the picture on the right is for Ridgecrest. This is a picture of the new refrigerated.
What was the problem?
That was to address the heat
Heat issue.
issues at the two schools.
Oh, you're talking about the cooling system?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And,
So this isn't a problem, this is the solution?
Solution, yes.
Thank you, okay, I
Yes.
just wasn't quite sure.
Yes. This is a completed project
Okay.
that was completed over the summer. And this is the same solution to the heating, where we went and met with the staff at Ridgecrest, and the board approved the project. They asked if there was at least cold water on the campus where the kids could fill their water bottles so that it'll help cool them down. So we put 2 of these refrigerated hydration stations there at Ridgecrest.
Lydia, do you know if these are the ones that up in the top right-hand corner there, it actually documents how much?
Yes.
Okay, so.
It'll tell you how many water bottles have
Not used.
not
yes.
used because you refill your own water bottle.
So I took some site leader, when I was board president, we visited Environmental Charter High School in Lawndale, and they have these there, and they've used these also in terms of their curriculum as well. So because it's tracking how many water bottles you haven't used, the decrease in the carbon footprint, sustainability. They also have a plastic-free site where no student is allowed to bring on a plastic bottle. Not saying we necessarily need to go that far at a school, but I'm bringing it up that I think it's a really good opportunity for some teachers to tie in their curriculum to what essentially was a water fountain to help kids stay cool. I think there's a whole wealth of opportunity there since they're on campus.
I really think this is probably going to be a topic of discussion, and more of our sites are going to want
So
these.
are you anticipating some Me Too's?
Yes.
I just want to thank you too for doing this for the Ridgecrest community so quickly and getting that air conditioning in, and for Rancho Vista too, for both the schools. I wish our friends from Ridgecrest were here to see it, but I know the kids will be so excited, and I'm wondering, there's one of these, and I'm sure the word will get out. And remind us again how much each one of those costs. I don't want to hold you to it. If you don't know, it's okay.
$7,500. And the reason they are more expensive is because they are the refrigerated
Yeah, no,
units.
and that's the whole point of
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic, so thank you.
Sure. This is just a couple pictures we're going to show you of some of the summer roofing projects. This is Lunada Bay, and it was a replacement on this building. And we did 10 schools this summer: Lunada Bay, PVIS, Mira Catalina, Cornerstone, Point Vicente, Silver Spur, Soleado, Vista Grande, Miralest, and Penn High. And this is a really great picture that Wade did for us. It was taken with a drone, and he's actually going to do all the sites where they did the roofing projects. And if you can see the 4 white roofs that are at the top left of the picture, one of them is kind of hidden by trees. Those were roofs that were done last summer. And then the 2 at the bottom, the bigger one and the a little up above, those were just completed this summer. And this is a new product that's now required for the flat roofing systems, and it helps to reflect the sun and therefore keeping the buildings cooler. So hopefully the next picture will have all white roofs, but one summer at a time. So this is really cool, and hopefully I'll be able to share the other photos with you as soon as we can get them. This is Miralest Marauders, their marquee. It's a new electronic marquee. It's not completed yet. You can see the trenching work that's taken place. So the next part of this project is the electronical installation for power. Here is the new furniture that the board approved at Peninsula High School. This is in one of the classrooms. And this next picture here is the new weight room. The weight equipment was just delivered yesterday, and the installation began today. So we're hoping that early in September, once all the weight equipment is installed, we can have our ribbon cutting, which will be sending the invitations out for the board to attend, so it's almost there. This is the interior of the new BITSA office. This is here at Malaga Cove, and they just completed the work here. And on the other side of this same building, along the grass, is where we have the new technology workroom, which has really created a nice work area for our technicians to work on the computers. We've put blinds up so that they can pull the blinds down and then no one can see inside the rooms. And then this is the other section. So it's a real great workspace that we've been able to create with the district and the additional computers these guys are handling. I don't know, Trent might know the number, but lots and lots of computers. And now they actually have some space to work out and work on the computers. So
How have you, Trent, because I know you're really jammed in your space here, have you repurposed?
Yeah, basically, we had 10 people in our area, and so now we've been able to transition 3 of the technicians. They have not only their own desk, the first slide you saw, but this is a workspace area. For example, we just received 40 laptops that we're now setting up that will be distributed, out ready for distribution in the next week and a half. So they have some workspace there. They have ability to, have their tools, have workbenches. It's a much better situation. Plus, we now have in our office area, we have better working space for the existing staff, for the network guys, for our data staff too.
Okay. And Lydia, about how much of this work was done in-house?
on this side, I believe all the work except dropping the lines was done with our guys. Is that right, Trent, on your side?
Everything, the only thing that was done outside was we had some of the larger scale electrical work was done, and then some of the pulling the cabling for the data lines and security for the building. But everything else, I want to recognize all the maintenance crew, painters, carpenters. They built all the shelving. They did a pretty amazing job for us.
Yeah, all that counter space, our guys built in there for them. And then in this side of the room, the windows were done by Garcia Bentley. And, but our guys did the painting and cleaning the carpet and getting this room ready. And then again, the same thing as on the other side, the big electrical drops and everything was outsourced also.
Sort of a far cry from the recommendation we had about 7 years ago that we had to tear down this building.
Actually, that you have to remember that that's what we were supposed to do. So.
And weren't we smart to keep it?
Okay, and then the last thing, this is just, I would say, a foreshadow of things to come. So this happens to be a picture of Point Vicente. It's not so much a picture of the playground as it is a picture of the play surface. Our surfaces are, well, the equipment and everything is about 14 years old. And the life of the surfacing is about 6 to 7 years. So you can see that we've more than doubled the life of the surfacing. The problem is we have some of our schools where we've had Playmata come out, which is the vendor that we got the surfacing from. It's a very expensive product, but there are some sites where they feel that it is not even safe to go in and do the repairs any longer. So this is something that we'll have to think about. I do want to bring it back with more detailed information. It's a high ticket item if we look at the same type of resurfacing product. So that's one of the things that we're going to research. And then the other area is, well, if we are at a point where there's surfaces that absolutely need to be replaced. I don't think any of us are at a point where we're going to close a playground, so we'll have to address it. So how do we fund that? So I'll bring back to you possibilities. I'll bring information back on what we have left in deferred maintenance. We do have one-time money. I'll bring back different options for you to consider. But tonight, I wanted to bring it to your attention that it's really important, and it is something that we're going to need to address sooner rather than later. And so we need to think about how we're going to be able to do that.
Any of the elementary schools, you mentioned Point Vicente, was Mira Catalina?
Mira
one?
Catalina.
I think the principal mentioned that to me when I
Yeah,
was
Silver
there.
Spur, Vista Grande.
9.
I mean,
are on the
so all the
more
elementary
critical-
schools?
yes, all
But
of
those
them.
are, okay.
Yeah.
They're all the what? I'm sorry?
They're the more critical ones. There's about 4 to 5 sites that are more critical. The others could still
Pat,
take
we
some
just-
repairs.
We just.
No,
put
not
in-
the new playground, the primary playground.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
Has A-Skip weighed in on this?
yes. So there's some recommendations from them. Like I said, we don't have to go with the same type of surfacing. This is a very expensive surfacing, and that's why we didn't use it for the new Meerkat playground nor the new Valmonte playground. But on those sites that can still handle repairs, you're looking at $3,000, $4,000 repairs versus we categorize them as under 10,000 and then close to 50,000 and over. And so I want to do a more detailed presentation where I can show you more options. But it's something that's on the horizon that we really need to be thinking about. So I wanted to,
Just two things. Lydia and I meet weekly, just the two of us, and I'm going to speak for both of us quickly. I think this is maybe number one on our list for priority. We really want to bring back recommendations, give the board some options, but we want this addressed. This is this is not good. And the other thing I would like Lydia to speak to quickly, there's a reason why we chose this picture, and that is the amount of space that we currently have covered by this pretty expensive matting that doesn't need to be. So I'd like Lydia just to address that quickly.
yeah. What I've learned that I didn't know before was that when these playgrounds were put down, we put them down in the existing footprint of the sandboxes that we had. So I was surprised to know we had such very, very large sandboxes.
Each community.
Yeah, apparently.
But
And it was cheap.
because it was already framed with the cement curbing, it made sense to pull the sand out and put the subsurface and then the mat surfacing. One way to save money is to cut down the footprint of the surfacing. So you can see in this corner here, it's just a big play space, and the cost of replacing the surfacing is by square foot. So that's going to be another option that we'll bring forward, is if you reduce the amount of square footage, you'll also spend less to replace the surfacing. So that's another option. Playground, swings do require more surfacing. So for swings, for example, from the point where the swing hangs at the top, the hinge, down to the floor, you need double that amount in front and in back. So swing sets require more surfacing. So that's another conversation you could have about swings versus the climbing equipment. So those are all different things that we'll bring back that we've thought about, but it's something important that we really need to address, and it's a matter of how large the scope will be.
Is the equipment itself okay?
The equipment is old, but we have it inspected by the manufacturers, and so it's whenever it requires some repairs, we take care of the repairs quickly, and so equipment, although is old, it's still good.
Is it being used by the kids?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask one quick question?
Yes.
Sorry. So there were a couple things that have been on here forever. These 2 items at PV High, are those finished now? That walkway that was falling down, and then the glue lamp
Still
thing?
working on, didn't get a picture of the,
Okay, I don't need a picture. I just was
okay,
curious
yeah.
if they were.
and
if
the
they
glue
were-
lamps are still being worked on.
They're still hanging in
Yes.
there. Okay.
Will it be ready for school?
I'll find out for sure and let you know.
That one walkway thing is.
The walkway, I believe, is because that's a repair we were working on. The glue lamps is more a DSA issue.
All right. Very nice, thank you. We're on to this consent calendar. Barbara, is there anything you'd like to pull?
Nothing to pull.
Malcolm?
Yes, I'd like to pull O2C.
Tony?
I was going to pull the same one.
Linda?
Two, I just want to make sure I can read my handwriting. It was the O2J.
All right, so can someone make a motion to approve O1A through C, O2A and B, O2D through I, O2K through L, O3A through B, O4A and B?
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, O2C.
Yes. Will you take this?
I will.
Yeah, I just had a question of, about the amount of grant that we received as opposed to what we had hoped to receive. So I spoke with Dr. Culverhouse, and she kind of clued me in, and I think it would be good for us all to hear this.
So basically, our initial grant proposal was to a total of $31,000. And because we asked for 15.5, and we were approved for 10.4. And what we did is Joan is now in charge of the Arts for All program. It was usually under the guise of Jody. She met with the art projector, the director, Gail Finney. And what they did is they went through the entire plan, and they were able to just cut the plan by 2 weeks, which from 8 weeks down to 6 weeks. So we kind of like just chopped off, went from the 8 weeks was 16,000, we went down to 16,000, went down to 12,000. So we just cut a little, itemized every budget item, cut back to get it within our grand total of our matching fund. So we feel that it's going to cut the program by 2 weeks, but we still feel that the fourth graders will get an enhanced program.
So was there a reason why the funding amount was lower than we expected and or the past, considering our long partnership?
Right, the scoring, I have a call into Megan Fitzpatrick, and I will put that in my update once I hear back from her. I have not heard back from her. Our score was a 77 out of 100. And so my question to her is to maybe go over the rubric with her, kind of look at some areas of improvement that we can do if we submit the grant again. So hopefully I'll hear back from Megan and we'll report back to the board.
The other thing that you enlightened me was I was the board rep for the Arts for All team back in 2006 when I took over for Ellen Perkins when I came on the board. And Ira was very much involved, even when he left us as superintendent. He did consulting work for the County Arts Commission. At times, they've had the philosophy of spreading the,
Sure.
the deal. So instead of having fewer, they want to have more. So could you enlighten us about some of the numbers you?
So basically, we were approved at the 10-4. The biggest approval was the total, the largest amount that they approved was the 20,000.
Yeah.
So they were not approving big, large amounts. It was just up until 20,000. We were down at 10-4.
Yeah.
But you can see if you go on the website, they've pulled out, but our local Lawndale got 18.6. Little Lake Elementary District got 11,000. So I think in your philosophy of how they were spreading out the numbers, they've given to a lot more schools than they have in the past.
So was there any conversation about us just making up the difference and not cutting the weeks?
No, because that would have been a discussion had we felt that it would have impacted the program of what the kids would have received. But when Joan met with the director of the Art Museum, I mean, she just felt, the education, she just felt we could still give the students a great program.
And Tony, it's a plein air experience, so.
We got plenty of those
We got
opportunities,
plenty of
right?
plein and plenty
Yes.
air, so that should be really interesting.
On that note, would someone make a motion?
I
please?
make a motion to approve O2C.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Linda, O2J.
Okay, so I had two questions on this. The first was, I had a question from a community member that there was a psychological testing attached to this reading program. When I looked on the website and in the contract, I couldn't find anything on that. So that was just someone's idea that wasn't a fact. So I just wanted to clarify that. Is that correct?
There's no
Okay.
psychological testing in this things.
The other thing, though, I did have an aha moment when I saw this, because when you look at your children's academic record or grade book for standardized testing over the years, there are scores for something called Ames Web, and I never knew what that was. And I'm just wondering if it's something that it would be helpful for principals or teachers to advise parents what this are, because I forget exactly what it says, but you have like a number, and it doesn't really tell you anything that helps you help your child or gives you comfort that, oh, they're doing great in something. And then teachers don't really explain it, and so going forward, that might be something, I don't want to not approve it, I'm just saying maybe it's something, if it's helpful to share. I mean, sometimes those things cause problems, and I don't know if you want to go with the opt-in thing on this, I'll leave that up to you to deal with, but just informing people that what the results are, what they mean for kids.
That's a good suggestion,
Because
thank you.
it's tested at all, TK through 9, so.
If you look at the way we're looking at that, it's basically in the past. So this has been reworked. In the past, we used to do TK through 9. The recommendation this year is working at TK through 5, and then looking at our upper or secondary schools using it as an intervention tool.
Oh, okay, I didn't
So
read
in the
that-
past, it
that
was
differently.
TK through
Okay,
9,
okay,
correct.
Okay, thank you. So should I move to approve that? I will do that. Oh, what do I say again? Sorry, I move approval.
Someone want a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
P1 is for information only, and my favorite letter of the alphabet, Q, adjourned.
No, you had 6.